Good morning, everybody. It's half past ridiculous, and we're seeking a sentimentum. Oh, what a week. It's been insane this week, and stuff happening all over the place. I don't know, I don't follow the mainstream news, so I rarely get any of the programming garbage that people see, but I do follow Facebook, at least some of it, and lots and lots of contacts, lots of conversations. Yeah, it's been insane. Energies have been off the charts. Things are coming to a head in a big way. I mean, I know folks have been saying that for 3-4 years now, and basically they're right, because from their perspective, where their focus is, it's coming up, and things change, and then new things come up, and we got to wait a little while and do some more work and make those things change, and then that is over with, and then new things come up, and it just keeps going over and over and over again. But we're running out of stuff to come up, and I mean, it's insane out there if you have a look at it, the way things are going, the amount of exposure that's happening right now. It's crazy. People are just not taking the party line anymore, or they're not accepting the party line anymore, and they're questioning. They're going, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. What are you talking about? And I love it. That's exactly what we should be doing. We should have been doing this since the 30s, and if we were doing that since the 30s, none of this would be happening. So I'm overjoyed that this is now coming out in a big way, that people are to the point where they aren't just accepting what the so-called authorities are saying. They're holding them to task. They're making them answer for it, and yeah, I'm very, very happy about that. And keep doing it, folks. That's exactly what we should be doing. Shed light on it, expose it, and don't get militant. Like we were saying before, anger doesn't do any good. I mean, it's a good motivator, but when you're in the thick of things, you can't be all upset and jumping up and down and screaming and yelling, because that doesn't serve anything. You have to be very, very calm, ask the right questions, and don't take, we're just going to move on for an answer, because that's what they want to do. They don't want this stuff exposed. Anyway, Carl's here, and was a little nervous. He put a post up saying that he's not at home and he may not make it, but he did make it. Hi, Carl. How you doing?
I'm great, and agree with what you're saying. The stuff this week's just been absolutely crazy, stupid, weird. Energies are just off the charts, like you say, and the stuff that's going on in the mainstream news, it just blows me away. It's just so bizarre. I just don't know how anybody could believe any of it, and the fact that there are more and more people who are becoming more aware and questioning and standing up and doing things in the right way. It's just phenomenal to watch. Of course, you still have the stupid idiots sometimes that I don't think we're ever really going to get rid of them, but it's having such a transformative effect, and I love it just the same as you. I think it's all timed, because we're doing this show. We've been doing all the research for so many years, haven't we? And now we've reached the point where there is a fundamental change in how humanity, I think, has to progress. And I don't want to boast, but I think we came together at the right time to put our knowledge and our energy and our thoughts into the shows to get out to the people who are looking for the answers that we hopefully are able to provide for them in many different subjects, because a sentiomentium, meeting of the minds, isn't just about the law. kind of started out maybe that way, but we've branched out because people are interested in not so much what the problems are. I think most people are getting to know that now. They have an idea. Now they want to know, what the hell do we do about it? How do we do this? How can I do it on my own? Well, pretty damn hard to do it on your own. So get communities.
Well,
Change your mindset.
the concept of law came up when people needed some sort of guidelines as to social interactions. Now, in a perfect world, those guidelines wouldn't be needed because everybody would simply know you just be nice. But history shows us that there are always going to be certain factions of the community who either through anything, ego, fear, need, private necessity, they find themselves in a position where they either forget to be nice or simply cannot be nice, and that's where the law comes in. And the common law is very simple. Like we said, we've beleaguered this point numerous times. Do no harm, cause no loss or damage, and use no fraud in contracts. And very, very simple, very easy to understand. Anybody can figure that out. Even children don't understand this. And it's a guideline as to how to interact with your neighbors, with the people that you deal with. Now, it's not just that. I mean, there's a lot of other ways that we interact which aren't codified. They're not written down. There's no guidelines involved in this, but we still need to look at this. And this is, another aspect that we're moving into is not just law, not just the rules per se of I don't want to use the word society because it's the wrong word, of community. And that's why we're sort of branching out a little bit, is because, it does encompass a larger perspective, and we get people thinking about, what can I do within my interactions to make things go a little more smoothly? And, certainly following common law, accepting and living by common law is the first start to it. But it comes down to conflict resolution. It comes down to resource management, time management. How are you going to deal with all of this stuff so that everybody wins? And because there doesn't have to be one winner, one loser. Everybody can win. We know this. We've seen it. If you look at any situation, a little bit of compromise is not necessarily a loss, but it smooths things over and makes things work. And if everybody's willing to do that, then everybody wins. Everyone benefits. And I think this is where we're going to wind up leading into is just a discussion on how we can interact. Let's use the word more appropriately, and what those benefits and where the pitfalls may be, where the benefits are, that sort of thing. So we've had a couple of questions. Clive, I don't think Clive is here. I don't see him on the list. But he asked about expanding a little bit on the concept of public and private, because it's very confusing. I'm confused by it. I have somewhat of a grasp of it, but I'm certainly no expert on this. But I'd like to open up the discussion on that and see where that takes us.
Okay. So I think we both have, or we've come into contact with the differences between, public law, private law, and acting just solely in the private, because I think they all are separate entities. The difference between public law and private law, I think, has a lot to do with trusts, which is a whole new ballgame all by itself. Public law, of course, is just where we end up with the Admiralty maritime type law in court system, where they just presume and assume jurisdiction and everything else that goes with it. Acting in the private, from my perspective, is before you even get to a court filing process, it's, I would say, is the administrative process that we are aware of, and we have mentioned how you interact and deal privately with the other side, whether that be a lawyer or person to person. That's kind of my perspective on the very basics of it. Obviously, we can expand a lot further on that. I don't know if you have anything different in your research as well, John, or...
Well, I'd like to, we'll look at it really from the bare bones basics. We'll start right from scratch. And most people do get it, in at least to some degree, where, for example, if you have a farm, say 500 acres, you can basically do pretty much whatever you want on that property. You can get in, you can build your own car out of scrap and drive it around your property, and nobody has anything to say about it. There's no rules. Some guy in a funny hat with a gun isn't going to come up and say you can't do that, because it's private. And what you do within the private, you are fully and wholly liable for. If you're driving that car, traveling around in your property, and you run into a tree, you don't have insurance. There's no public safety net for you. I mean, yes, if you wind up whacking your head and you're bleeding all over the place, some ambulance is going to come and take you away if they call it. But being that it's in the private, you are wholly liable for what you're doing. When you're in the public, then the rules change a little bit, in that you can cause harm, loss, or damage to another. And I mean, it does sound like this is sort of overlapping a little bit, and it kind of does overlap a little bit, which is where the confusion comes in, because it's really hard. There's no actual dividing line there, and it's I'm sure there is, but I don't recognize it clearly at this point. But when you put yourself and your affairs into a position where other people, other individuals who aren't involved in the whatever conflict or whatever you're doing, have to step in or feel they have to step in to protect a third party, that is when it steps into the public, as far as I understand. And so if your affairs are not affecting anyone around you, and if they do affect someone around you, you've already talked to them and you've got their agreement that if it does, this is what's going to happen, and it's all on the up and up, and everybody knows what's going on. That, as far as I can see, is the dividing line between public and private, is who is it going to affect. Now, Carl, you made the thing about the Admiralty courts coming in, and that's a sign of the public. Not necessarily. The Admiralty is just simply one system of law that they apply pretty much like whitewash to everything. It's infiltrated pretty much all of our systems of law, whether it's civil law, whether it's family law, any of that stuff. It's all been inculcated into those surreptitiously, I might add. And so, yes, yeah, in a way, Admiralty is, if you look at it, if it's Admiralty law, it's public, most definitely, because that is, it's law merchant. It's that's the law that governs commerce, particularly big commerce, not necessarily some kid with a ice cream or with a lemonade stand on the corner. although they do try to do that, as we've heard a few times in the past.
Yes, many times.
Oh,
actually.
yes. It drove me nuts when I read about that.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at the difference between the public and the private, look at who is going to be affected, and if there is the opportunity for a third party to step in, because that's going to give you a pretty good example or a pretty good idea of whether it's public, whether it's private, and where it's going to change. Because if you allow a third party to come in, you're moving it from the private to the public. Because you can jump jurisdictions all over the place. It's so easy to do, and anybody who's been to court who is paying attention to what's going on and has the basis of knowledge can see exactly when they do this, and they do it constantly. Almost every time they open their mouth, they're trying to get you to switch jurisdictions so that they can play their game. I was going to go somewhere with this.
A prime example, John. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you want to follow that?
Let me think.
Well, okay, you think. I just wanted to jump in on that, because the prime example of being forced into the public jurisdiction and the court jurisdiction is when you try and apply the likes of conditional acceptances and questioning or validating the debts is a prime one, because they do that so quickly and so easily. You're trying to work within the private medium, following through on an administrative process to establish the facts as you want to understand them of any particular contract. What they typically do when you question that is they very quickly say, oh, you've done something wrong, we don't like that, and here's now is court papers. That moment is when they're trying to get you into the court system, which typically frightens the crap out of anybody that ever gets a court records or court filings, I should say. And they don't know what to do with them. As we've discussed in previous shows, typically the best thing to do is no contract, return to sender. You don't want anything to do with it. Or you do the conditional acceptance, say, okay, well, if you want me to go to court, then here are my terms, which are basically going to be the same terms that you've been asking for in the administrative process, which in the case of debt validation is, well, validate the damn debt. I want to see the accounting. I want to see the evidence of where I owe you anything, and so on and so on. Do you even hold currently the debt obligation, the note? All these separate things come into it.
Yeah.
So that's quite quickly why they can get you into the public system, just in that particular circumstance, and how easy it went from being totally private between you and the other side into the next thing you know, you're in court.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go that route, be sure you have the correct verbiage. And, what jumped out right away with what you were saying, Carl, is the phrase holder in due course. And that when you're dealing with a contract, that is the correct verbiage to use. If they are not the holder in due course, they have no jurisdiction or standing to sue. And most people miss it. Most people forget it. And, they say, well, produce the contract. Well, you haven't said I'm supposed to be the holder in due course, so what the hell? I don't have to. But if you use the verbiage, if you use the correct verbiage, they are pinned. They have to produce. And this is one of the tricks with the Admiralty law system, is that if you don't use the right language, they don't even know what you're talking about, and they just ignore you. When you're there pro se, as presenting yourself within that system, chances are you're not going to use the right language, so they're just going to ignore everything you say. And they have, according to their own rules, the right to do that. Whether that's right or not, it's up to whoever's dealing with it. I mean, if from one perspective, it's perfectly fine because this is this is their own language, this is their own copyrighted rules, and you're not part of the system, so you're not allowed to use them. So we're not even going to listen to you. But from your perspective, you know, they're causing you harm, they're causing you loss or damage, and you have a right to speak and a right to be heard. So, you know, it depends on what perspective you're looking at it from. Now, certainly, I would think that if it was done correctly, everyone has a right to be heard. And it doesn't matter what language they're speaking, they should still have the same right and the same weight to what they're saying. So, you know, keep in mind, if you're playing in their game, you got to know your stuff. Now, if you want to settle something in the private, it is what we've talked about before, using an administrative remedy. And in the case of, say, well, we can kind of step in with what Mark has been going through with his issues in England, where a company, individuals representing a company or a corporation, which is nothing more than an idea, a piece of paper, have come and made certain demands, and Mark has replied recently, I might add, just because he's only recently come into this information, in an administrative fashion, where sent them a note. You've made these claims. Prove these claims. You have a certain amount of time to do so. If you don't do so in a certain amount of time, this matter is settled and done with, and you have no claim to make. When that's done, you take that to preferably an honest notary, if you can find such a thing. And if your paper trail is correct, if the information is correct, and everything is on the up and up, you've sent them repeated notices, repeated requests for confirmation. They haven't responded or responded with a non-answer, haven't answered your questions, then you can obtain what's called an estoppel, which is a common law agreement, very powerful agreement that says you can't play this game anymore. You're not going to bother me with this anymore. This is done. It's finished. We've already asked you the questions. We've already gone through this. You're finished. Usually what happens is the party who doesn't want to answer the questions will haul this into a court before the administrative process is finished, because they don't want to finish it because they know they're going to lose. And the courts tend to simply walk all over the administrative process. They just ignore the process because in their world, it doesn't exist. It's common law. They have nothing to do with it. As far as enforcing that, I haven't figured that out yet. I'm sure there's a way to do it. You can probably build a court as a third-party interloper. I'm sure you can. There's a number of ways that you can throw a wrench in the works. But if Mark's ready, let's talk to Mark a little bit. And he's just before the show, he was telling us that there's been some interesting developments over the last week. We had a discussion a little earlier this week, and Mark was a little confused about where to go next with this, and I offered him a possibility, and I think he ran with that possibility. And I'd like him to come out and tell us, you know, what sort of.
Just before he does, John.
Okay.
Yeah, just before he actually comes in on the voice, I just want, for those that don't know the background, I just wanted to mention that Mark's been fighting. Let's just say a large corporation plus the local authority. In essence, it was to do with land development, and it was property that Mark has a contractual agreement to make use of, and basically the development was worth an awful lot of money. And they obviously wanted to try and force Mark out of this contract, off the property. And Mark has actually been fighting this, well, close on, maybe even a little over 3 years now. And as I've said privately, and I've said this before publicly, The fact that he's managed to stay afloat during this process for 3 years, I've just got to give you your dues, Mark. Excellent stuff.
Most definitely.
He was, yeah, he was directed to us to listen to our shows. We talked to him and we gave him some ideas and ran with it. And less than 3 weeks later, he's a very happy man. So, Mark, come in. Let's, after that little bit of a background introduction, just if you've got something to share, please do.
Hi, everyone. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, coming in awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite fascinating, where we was in the beginning and not knowing how the law worked. But it was sheer perseverance that, and gut feelings that these people were in the wrong. And we weren't going to give it up. I mean, they tried to blackmail us, bribe us, pay us off. They've admitted in emails, letters of the guilt, civil wrong, wrongdoing, law retort, the whole thing. And it's got to the stage where the government's involved now. And it's the Homes and Communities Agency. And to cut a long story short on what it was to do with two farmers. And we came across and we wanted just a better life. And some acreage came up. And it was for me to, to start up a company, not a company, a charity called Operation Recovery, which I do, pay out of my own pocket, and it's helping people with PTSD, ex-squaddies, basically. And we came across this property, and the farmer said, yeah, it's property, we want to lease it out. And, well, it wasn't. 1,700 acres and a whole farm. Well, it's got to the stage. I was just going to touch on what John was saying then. We was asking for these corporate entities the proof of flesh and blood, because one of the corporate entities actually put a name down on the document of Mills and Reeves LLP and actually signed it Mills and Reeves LLP in wet ink. So we threw that one back to him and said, well, this document's not worth the paper it's actually written on, because unless you can prove to me that this signature is a real person, then you've got no case. Because what is it in contract law that an entity, a fiction, cannot take a human being of flesh and blood to court because it doesn't exist. As they say, it only exists on paper. It's man-made, but these solicitors and so forth, they're telling us that, yeah, we are legal persons, these are legal entities and so forth. Yeah, I get that. And legal entities, they can sue, they can own property and so forth, but only other legal entities, persons and so forth, not real human beings of flesh and blood. What was you saying to that? Sorry.
No, carry on, Mark.
So anyway, we was asking for all this information. Please provide us with the real person of the real human being of flesh and blood, who is Sue GP LLP and Sue GP Nominee Limited, who are subsidiary corporate entities to another corporate entity, which is Aviva PLC. So this is how far we've gone with them. We've asked them for this information, that they're denying us access, that they will not send the documentation to us. So I didn't know where I was until I came to the program. I knew I did a bit of digging in the past, and we got so far. But it was just an extra bit of shove that we need, not shove, should I say, a bit of help that we needed. And I came across a Facebook, an ad on Facebook, not an ad, sorry. I posted something on a page that I have on Facebook about me and Lisa versus these corporate entities. And I've just been copying and reposting what these corporate entities are doing to people like ourselves, and they think they can get away with it with their maritime admiralty law. But my argument is, where's the sea on the land? It doesn't work. So a woman who I came across, you need to get onto this. This will can help you. And since I've been on it has. It really has helped. So what we've done now, they've refused to send us all this information. Well, this is vital information, Kate. They're presuming that they can take us to court, but we're asking who is taking us to court, because your legal entities cannot take a human being to court. So it said we hand delivered a letter on the 22nd of August, last Monday, after speaking with John. Thanks very much, John, because this went. And it says here, the case number and so forth. Please find it, because they wouldn't. I said, you've created a stopple in an email to them, and they won't reply to this one. So I said, please see attached an email dated July 2017 at 11:06 a.m. from the claimant solicitor Mills and Reeves LLP, stating that the claimants no longer wish to litigate any further. Well, thank you very much. As I was talking to John, I said, please see attached the letter dated Monday the 21st of August 2017 that we accept their offer to cease litigation. The court services are no longer required for case number such and such. The hearing scheduled on the 13th of 27 at 2 p.m. can be dismissed. Yours faithfully. Now, we handed and we got it stamped by the courts. Then we sent a recorded delivery, a letter to their solicitors, who Mills and Reeves LLP. And we basically said exactly the same thing. So we wrote a letter and attached a letter that we sent to the courts. They've gone absolutely bonkers. They said, oh, you can't do this. They actually wrote us a letter back and saying, oh, we've attached a letter. When we posted that the Tuesday around about 10 o'clock in the morning, they sent another letter back saying, oh, it's self-explanatory that we've sent a letter to the courts stating that, we did not say that we didn't want to litigate no more any further. Well, I've got it here. I have got the proof, and we sent it to the judge. Mm-hmm. So there we are. I mean, it's quite right what John says. It's created an estoppel. And to me at the moment, having butterflies and so forth dealing with courts, without the help and the knowledge of what we've discovered, it was screwing me and Lisa, and we just didn't know where to go. But as I said earlier on, we knew there was a gut feeling that something was wrong. And now, because we stopped a 500 mil water pipe coming through our land, even Severn Trent Water, the water company, turned around and issuing us warrants saying, you've got no right to stop us. Well, if you read reading and researching what these companies' rules are and the laws which are abided by these companies, and it clearly states there, you're only allowed to issue a warrant, 28-day notice, if you have an existing water pipe in. Now, if you're going to put a brand new water pipe in, i.e. 500 mil, which is going to feed 6,500 houses, this is how big this is. And a whole new town. And what was it? Yeah, I've just lost my place then. Yeah, well, it clearly says you have to have this permission and their signature. And the thing is, these corporate companies, right, they were actually sending us the documentation for sign. I had them up here in the house, and the whole house is. And you want to hear the lies and the deceit, what they were coming out, and I was recording them, and so we transcribed them. They've gone to the courts and all this lot, but they've managed to get it behind closed doors, as in judges' chambers. Now, I've come across a document now, which it's very knowledgeable, this one, because it's actually saying what's going off with our situation at the moment. And I got it from Freedom School, and it's a website, but it tells, it's got quite a lot of things there. But one thing what came to mind and caught my eye was this judges' chambers and common law courts. What's the difference between it? And there's 6 pages of this, and these 6 pages are going to go to the judge, because we've actually turned around and we put it on paper, we've hand delivered it as well. We do not consent to your jurisdiction, and we do not consent to anything. Now he's going a bit mad now. So, you know, I only can throw what I know at them. So there you go at the moment. You know,
yeah. So basically, Mark, what you ended up doing for the last 3 years or so was just playing defense. You know, you were batting back the ball back into their court as often as you possibly could with everything they were throwing at you, but you had no real ammunition to, let's say, pin them down. And as you mentioned, you were listening to our show and you've got some ammunition, and now you're winning.
You see, that's exactly right, Carl. I mean, and John pointed it out earlier on. When it's all right, you can go screaming and shouting at these people. I mean, it'd get you nowhere, because they stand there and just look at you. Right now, I'm a pretty feisty person anyway. So special forces, for God's sake. So, you know, it's just my nature. And when it's to do with your family and these people, the amount of damage they've caused to my family and our Lisa's horse, you know, it's phenomenal. And I'm not letting them get away with it. But you can go screaming and shouting to all these people and so forth, but it doesn't get you nowhere. We was actually throwing information that was totally irrelevant to the actual case itself, just to bluff our way through. And, you know, I shouldn't swear, but bullshit baffles brains. And it worked until we came here. And now we collated all our information. You know, we've got over 5,000 bits of paper, you know, of defence against these corporates. And the judge cannot ignore this, but this is exactly what he's doing. He's ignoring the defence in judges' chambers, because if you consent to it, if you consent to whatever their jurisdiction is, they're not going to listen to you. You know, their way is their way, or you take the highway. End of story. But as long as it's
So my view, though, is what they've done, or what they've done. They want to get this in judges' chambers so that it's, as we mentioned, kind of a quasi-private setting, and they can have the judge make a decision in the favor, of course, of the. Are you the plaintiff in this one? They're the plaintiff, aren't they? So yeah, it would be making a decision in their favor.
Well, the big thing about the judges' chambers is that it's off the record. There will be no record of what goes on in those chambers. So the reason why they want to do that, I believe, is so that the information that you've collected, the lies, the deception, all that bullshit, doesn't get on the record.
That's true. That's very true. Because the thing is, I did what you said as well. I invoked it all.
Yep.
Which probably sent them into a tailspin.
I hope so, but it's done it so far, to tell you the truth. It's done it. I mean, anybody else which is listening here, I mean, I've got a Facebook page, and it's Mark and Lisa Sue GP LLP, Sue GP nominee. If you go and have a look what I've been putting on there, and I know for a fact, same on LinkedIn, I've been feeding them, and I've been feeding them what's true under common law, what admiralty law is all about, and if you stand up on your own 2 feet and have the balls just to turn around and say no, you start to get somewhere, because then you're in control of it.
Yeah. One thing with the water, just specifically with that water pipe. Now, if you want to just make that all go away, take a page from what goes on in Canada with the oil industry. If the oil company wants to put a derrick on your land and pump oil out of the ground, they have to pay you a royalty and rent for your land. So with the water company, if they want to put a pipeline through the land, certainly it's $200 a square foot per month. That's the fee. I mean, I would make it relatively reasonable, but I would make it enough that it's worth your while. And if they want to do it, they are obligated to deal with that. It's the same thing with the oil companies here. They can't just, they may have the right to the oil, but they can't just plop a derrick on your land and take up your farmland and have a road and easement and all of that sort of stuff without benefit coming to you. I'm going through. Well, I'm not going through it because I really don't care one way or the other, but it came up with me where I live. There's a house in the back of my property, and the people who are there need to go through, my yard to get to their house, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But we had an argument one day about an easement, and we got an easement where we have a right to do this, and I go, no, you don't have an easement. There's no paperwork. There's no agreement involved here. You're welcome to come and go as you please, but you don't have a right to do this. You're doing it under my suffrage. And they didn't like that at all. And the reason why they don't have an easement is because in order to get one, there must be a benefit to the burdened property. Now, which means that they would have to shovel the walk. They would have to make sure that it stays clean. There would have to be some benefit to my yard for them to go through. It's right there. All you got to do is read the rules, and it's really no different with what you're going through with the water company. If they want an easement, if they want to have this go through your land, there must be benefit come to the burdened property or your land, and that way you can say it's a conditional acceptance again. We go through this a number of times. When these things come up, never actually refuse, because that puts you on the back foot. If you conditionally accept it, you put them on the back foot. So, sir, you can put your pipeline through the land. It's going to cost you, £80,000 a year rent or whatever, right? I'd go through and look at what's available and what's happened before, and try to stay within the realm of reality. Don't ask for $20 billion or 20 billion pounds per day, because that's ridiculous. Nobody's going to even. They're just going to say you're nuts and take your right to do that away for psychological reasons. So don't give them. They
start using vexatious and frivolous quite a lot when you do stuff like that.
That's right. So keep it in the realm of reality. Keep it in the realm of decent living. If they want to put the pipeline through your land, certainly you are entitled to compensation for the loss of your land, for the inconvenience, for having people coming in and out. Most definitely you are entitled to some compensation there. Make it reasonable. And then they can't say, well, this is unreasonable and we're not paying it and we're going to do it anyway because it's totally reasonable. And anybody looks at it goes, yeah, well, that makes sense. And it takes all their power away. The same thing with what you're going through with these corporations. If they want your land, compensate, have compensation. Or if you want to keep it, do what you're doing. I mean, it sounds like from what we discussed earlier, it sounds like they're basically finished. They don't have a leg to stand on now because they have said, we're not going to pursue this anymore. And if they do, then it's, they're in a really difficult position because they have to justify why they're bringing this back up, and they probably can't. So awesome, beautiful work. I love hearing about this. This is great. The next, well, I'm sure something's going to happen in the next week. Next week, come back and tell us what happened.
Yeah, just on the last note there, John. What you've just said is what we've already said to them. We actually said, look, we don't want the earth. They said, look, if you want this pipeline through, just pay our bill, which you owe us anyway. And the bills, what is it? It's not in its millions or hundreds of thousands. It's money that they owe us anyway. And I said, well, you pay that, then you can have that pipeline in there. Simple as that. But the thing is, they don't even want to do this. And they don't even, they're doing it through spite. They don't want to cut the nose off to spite the face, because it's turned out that the battle of this whole situation here, the whole battle's between now, me and Lisa versus the corporate companies, and they don't like it. And they're trying everything in their power to make us feel bad and just give in to them. But, I'm sorry, but I'm not giving in to them. It's like I said, we've got this far, and we've also got them on the law at all, because they put an electric substation on part of the land, and without our consent or signature and so forth, and they've had to not move it, buy another substation and shift it on down the road and connect it up there. So we've got a disused brand new substation. I'll put it on eBay. But we've got,
I like it.
but we've got them on the law of tort, and and the law of tort is saying that we can sue for the what is it, for the
value of the build.
To the value of the build. Now, I had one of their directors, from one of these companies, and he actually stated that, this, you've got to be realistic. This, what you're doing is wrong. I said, no, it's not wrong. It's right, because I'm defending my legal rights, my lawful rights, should I say. And he said, but the project's worth $6 billion. I said, well, I've got you on the law of tort then. And his face went white. I said, of course I wouldn't go for that. But the thing is, the law of tort is ×3.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did, we put a counterclaim in court, right, just to piss them off. And you should have seen the judge's face on this. He says, how much? I said, well, it's a law of tort. Now you can times that by 3. And he went white. He didn't know what to say. But we said, look, we want this, which is reasonable. It's not hard, but they don't even want to do that. They just want to bully us into this, but I'm sorry, it's not going to work. So stick by your guns, people. It does.
When they to not litigate any further, now they're saying do want to, where does that place you? Because they're telling us enough to tell us to the other.
Did you hear that, Carl?
She was breaking up a little bit. I think she was a bit too far away from me.
Come here. Just ask Carl now.
Hi, Carl. Very
Hi
quick
there.
one. So the claimants basically wrote to us and said that they did not want to litigate any further, and we took your advice and said, okay, we accept your offer that to cease litigation, and we informed the court that there was no need for the court services any longer, and delivered that by hand. Well, when the letter went to the claimants stating that we had written to the court saying they were no longer required, because we'd accepted their offer to cease litigation and be dismissed. They then wrote to the court saying, no, total misunderstanding. We do want to litigate this, and the case will go in front of the judge at a hearing on the 13th of September. So they're trying to bring it back in again, although, there is no case because we don't recognise ourselves as their legal name, their straw man. So, we will go and defend our lawful right, and we won't be tricked into their name game by association. So, we've asked them to prove that we are the definite legal person that they are claiming us to be, because we do not recognize ourselves to be that, and we do not agree that we are that. We've asked, please provide the undeniable identification of the parties to the contrary, that we, as natural living human beings of flesh and blood, man and woman, are the same as the legal name the governments claim. These companies, Nominee Limited's claim is deemed to be false by a legal premise known as acceptance by conduct. And we have asked them, we've stated we won't be tricked by the legal system by using our called name as a trick by association with the apparently identical. We do not consent and are not in agreement in writing or implicitly by our actions or a trick, essentially a fraudulent inducement to contract. We've stated all of this to them, and yet they still believe that they have got the right to see us in front of the judge, got a pecuniary interest and shares of £200,000 in the controlling company of these parties who are taking us to court.
Yeah, which you also brought up in documents, I believe.
Absolutely. Okay. Many times.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the legal system and the corporations is that they will do pretty much anything they can to overrule you as the defendant or the respondent in any cases, simply because that's what they're used to doing. It's fraud, it's crookedry on a massive scale. So to stop them in their tracks, you've already gone, you must be already 80% of the way there. You literally have to force the issue with the court by saying, if they've now sent a letter in to say, yes, we are continuing, we want to litigate, you just have to say, no, you can't change your mind. You've already sent us a letter stating you don't want to litigate this anymore.
Well, this is what I did.
Change your mind now. This is frivolous. This is just a vexatious claim against me, and we've already established an estoppel against you. Enough is enough. That's where you need to get to. Okay.
Well, I mean, I did reply to when they stated that they wanted to continue, and I've stated to them that they can't just for their own gain change their mind because they feel like it. We accepted their offer, and that was the end of it.
Ask them directly if the letter that they sent saying that we don't want to litigate is, if they are admitting that it is in fact fraudulent. Pin them to their wrongs. Get them so they either walk away and it's gone, or they admit to deceptive acts and practices, fraud, extortion, all that stuff.
Okay.
Because they're saying that no, we didn't send that letter, and you've got it. I mean, email is admissible in court. That's been established for years. And yes, if that's the case, then either their claim that it didn't happen is fraudulent, or the letter they sent in originally saying they weren't litigating is fraudulent. One or the other. One is going to be fraud.
Okay. Right, so pin them for their wrong. So you stated documentation. What was the other couple? Sorry.
Well, I mean, the concepts here are deceptive acts and practices, fraud, and extortion. Those are the prime concepts you're dealing with. And the extortion is trying to nickel and dime you to death in court, making you, making it as uncomfortable as possible so you simply give up. That's extortion. That's not following the rules. That's not doing the right thing. That's waving a stick around until somebody says, okay, don't hit me anymore. That's extortion. The fraud,
I understand that now.
the fraud is claiming one thing to get you to go, oh, okay, well, we'll do it this way. And then later on changing it all and going, no, that didn't happen. We're doing it this way now. That's fraud. I mean, if you sign a contract and the other party doesn't adhere to the contract, they change the rules and try to pin you to it. That's fraud.
They've done that, yeah.
Yeah. And the deceptive acts and practices, again, that sort of encompasses all of that, in that they're saying one thing and doing another.
Okay, well, I'll send them a little line to that, to those, and we'll see what they come back with.
Yep. Also,
I think the other thing, as John mentioned, was to see if you can find, I don't know if it's called Red Shield notaries, but actually a true notary in the UK, and take him this information to see if he can, basically sign off on the estoppel that you've reached a point where somebody has to call quits on this thing.
Yep. Like a notary, a notary, their actual real job is that of a professional witness. Their job is to witness process. And when a notary witnesses a process, it is unquestionable because they're supposed to be totally honest and up and following the rules. That's why I say, if you can find an honest notary, awesome. I haven't yet. I've been looking for a long time.
Well, most of them are lawyers anyway, so
Yeah.
they're all supporting the system.
But a notary,
don't forget their first oath is to the court.
well, a notary, not a notary. A notary is the bridge between the public and the private. They are separate. That's why.
But that's what I was saying about a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. A lawyer's first oath is to the court, but the notary, in fact, has more power than the judge. They are the most powerful legal / lawful entity out there. And if you have a bulletproof paper trail with offer and acceptance, it's done. It's finished.
It's quite funny you mentioned that, because when we was in the first part of the hearing, and the judge turned around to us and said, right, he adjourned the case part heard. But just before that, it made me laugh, because when they applied the application to the courts, it clearly stated on the application that we are not going for court costs. So anyway, as we're sitting there, me and backside thinking, what's going off here? The judge turned around to their counsel and says, so what about costs? And this barrister, she turned around and said, oh, we've changed our minds now. We're going for court costs. Well, he actually jumped down on her throat on that one. So that went, on our side, because you just can't change your mind.
That's right. The judge gave you a very, very powerful lesson there, in that they cannot commit fraud.
But isn't that what the judge is doing anyway, in his chambers?
Yes. Well, they're in the chambers. They're trying to get it off the record, so nobody can 2 years from now go through this and go, look, this is all bullshit.
It's a private agreement by trickery.
That's right. Exactly. And it's deceptive acts and practices. Keep everything at this point, because it's already been on the record. Keep everything on the record.
The private agreement by
trickery.
Private agreement. Just writing this one down. By trickery.
I mean, you may want to research that a little bit to get the right verbiage, because that's probably not the correct words. But that's the concept. That's the concept. Is they're trying to trick? They're trying to trick you into a private agreement off the record, and don't do it. I mean, keep everything on the record, because that's your only defense. That's your only protection right now.
You see, that's exactly what we did, and that's why when we wrote a letter to the courts, and we hand-delivered this one as well, we were going to invoke all documentation to the public domain. So
Well, a common law court, that's exactly what a common law court is. It's a public venue where everybody can witness this. Trying to change venues now may not be quite as easy as you think. And it may cause you a number of issues. I would stay going with the way you're going. It's working. You've got them on the defensive. You've got them on the back foot. The only thing they can do now is either act correctly or simply stonewall you completely and walk all over you and do whatever they do, which they would normally do anyway. At which point then you go to the public, because then you have actually been harmed. And you can, at that point, invoke a common law court on a different matter, because now you're invoking the court not on the land grab, you're invoking the court on the harms of the land grab, which is a different matter that eliminates a lot of the issues of trying to swap jurisdictions.
Right, okay. I mean, the whole fact that we went into...
Sorry to interrupt, but another thought came up. You've got grounds for appeal. If this all goes sideways and doesn't go the way you expect it to go, you've got grounds for appeal because the judge is acting in a conflict of interest. You've got proof of it.
Of course, and he's also lied in his draft judgment where he stated that he informed us that £200,000 worth of shares, but actually his words were, I hold 200 shares, not the value of those shares.
Yep. Now, in a proactive manner, what you can do is you can get the, what would it be? I think in your country it would be the Solicitor General involved in this. Send him a note, send him all the information, go and look, your agents are criminals. Deal with this. Or we are going to sue you as the man, the individual, under your full private liability. And
in essence, it's the Ombudsman Lawyers or Solicitors Guild.
But you have to, if you're going to go that route, you have to go to the individual. You can't go to the office. You would go to Joe Blow acting as.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole point of the case, where we've already gone in, we've already had a hearing because we were duped into believing that we were the same as the person that's on their documentation, but now we understand that we're not that. So we're going in and stating, we do not recognise ourselves as being the legal name that you are stating that we are, and we do not consent to that. So they're going to try and obviously say, well, we've been in to the hearing and we've had this part heard, but the whole fact is, they tricked us, they duped us into believing that.
Yep. I mean,
no, they acted under a presumption. They acted under a presumption in that case that you were identifying as the corporate strawman fiction because you didn't correct them. Now you've corrected them.
Yeah.
Now they have an issue because you've now put their standing and their jurisdiction into question, and they really don't like that because even just one level of jurisdiction, if you go back to, I think it was the second show we did where we mentioned jurisdiction, the 7 elements of jurisdiction. If even one of those elements is questioned, then the whole idea of jurisdiction is thrown out. Their whole power to hear anything goes right out the window. Just by not applying one of those jurisdiction elements. Actually, no, my apologies. I think it's all of them.
Yeah, but
it's the presumptions that's one part, but the 7 elements, they have to all apply.
Yeah. And also what I was bringing up before, you have sufficient information now to hold the judge's boss to task. If his balls are on the block, he's going to phone the judge and go, make this go away right now. You've got the information, you've got enough at this point to be able to cause big problems in Parliament if you want to go that route.
But I mean, we've already gone. We've already written, to Theresa May. She already had followed up by the
sending it to the appropriate department.
Head of the Supreme Court judge. He had a letter from us as well.
Well, the Supreme Court judge is not the judge you're talking to's boss. Okay, you need to go to the judge's boss, the guy who he answers to, and put liability on his shoulders as well, because he's any manager of any company knows they are liable for the actions of their employees, and certainly, that's how that hierarchy works. So the individual who is, probably the Solicitor General, I don't know, it's Solicitor General in Canada. I don't know what it is in Britain, but quite possibly it's pretty much the same system all over the place. He is the boss of the judges. He's the one who oversees all of their actions and makes sure that they're supposed to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And when he gets dragged into this by the actions of his employees because of their screw-ups and wrongdoings, he's not going to be happy about it, especially if he holds a tremendous liability for this. And he will, because this is something that he has no stock in this development, so he doesn't really give a shit whether it goes through or not, other than tax revenue. So chances are, if you hit him in the right way, if you hit him with the right kind of liability, he's just going to phone the judge and say, "Stop, this is done, it's over, dismiss it."
Okay, all right. Well, that's letter 2.
I mean, keep thinking,
All right, well,
keep thinking how you can take this to the next level. Okay, if the Solicitor General sends you a note back, says, "I really don't give a shit, I'm not playing this game," go to his boss and say, "Look, we've got this issue with this one of your corporate employees," because that's all they are. We've gone to his supervisor. His supervisor has blown us off. Now we're going to his supervisor.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And go to the individual. Don't go to the office.
Okay. All right. I'll get onto that one. But thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really important that you now deal with the individual human being, because you've invoked that in your paperwork. Okay? We are living flesh human beings. We don't deal with corporations. So don't deal with the office. Deal with the human being.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll let you.
I think to clarify that as well, John, you have to put it in writing, his name. This is addressed to, Joe Bloggs, acting in the capacity of whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
so
you can
direct it at the name.
You can clarify it even further. You can clarify it even further by this is directed to the individual named Joe Bloggs acting as blah 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 blah. Right? So there's no question that this is, you're dealing flesh to flesh, not flesh to fiction or an office or any of that stuff. Because you're dragging it into the private now, because it's person against person. You've questioned the signatures. Okay, I see a blue ink signature here, but apparently this is a corporation, and as far as I know, a corporation is a piece of paper, can't sign this. Who the hell made this mark? Who is taking liability for this document? Right? One of the most powerful things that anyone can do if they get dragged into court is ask the question, who assumes liability for these charges? Because someone has to take liability for the charges. And that's one of the most powerful things you can do. If you do it in the right way, it's over at that point, because nobody will stand up. Then I know, who accepts, who claims liability for these charges? Nobody stands up. Okay, well, apparently there's no plaintiff. I demand a dismissal for lack of a plaintiff.
Wonderful.
I guess that could be a way of ending the court process as well. We'd have to see how the judge responds to that.
I think it's a little late for that because you've already accepted
Yeah, I
that there
guess.
is a plaintiff, right? Because you've already been through this so long. So that is kind of gone from your little bag of tricks.
Yes and no. Let's have a little discussion there on this new case, because they've already said they're no longer seeking any further litigation. But now they're in there seeking litigation yet again. So at this point, maybe that would work, because this is not a continuation. This is a new process that's beginning, because they've already said, no, we're done. And Mark and Lisa have accepted that. If the next process could be start all over again.
Yeah, if the filings after this point suggest a new procedure, then yes, that's because it's a new procedure. You could stop it right away. If it's simply a continuance of the old procedure, you're kind of stuck because you haven't already questioned that yet. And it's a little late to bring it up. I mean, you can bring it up. It's going to be really complicated and really difficult to deal with, because they're going to say, well, why didn't you bring this up in the first place? At which point it puts you on the defensive, and you got to backpedal and try to make it work. So it's, I mean, these guys are really good at what they do, believe me. And they've done it for a long, long time. Fortunately for us, they've got to the point where it's simply now a script. They don't actually comprehend what they're doing to the extent that they used to. So when you start throwing these wrenches in the works, they get really confused, and they screw up and make stupid mistakes because they're just following a script, and they don't realize the fine detail. And when you throw the fine detail at them, they fall down.
Yeah, it's process and procedure. That's pretty much all they learn these days.
Yep, exactly.
Thanks ever so much, guys.
No, thank you for coming on, Mark. We appreciate you telling us the story, and the fact that I believe we've managed to help. It's great. We love it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this is powerful stuff.
Yeah,
and go on, Job.
I should apologize for bringing up all of these different possibilities. I'm not doing it to confuse you. I know that's probably the effect it's having, but I'm bringing it up so that the listeners can know that there are multiple options whenever they run into a situation like this. In your situation, you're kind of you're on a path, so you need to pursue that path. But when something new starts, then you've got this huge book of options that you can work with. And I wanted the people to understand that there isn't just the need to go through the process to finish it. You can end the process right at the beginning if you can do it right. So I wanted to apologize for any possible confusion for bringing up old stuff.
No. It's worth its weight in gold, if you ask me. It really is, and people should take heed. Go and research. Knowledge, then action.
That's right. And there's nothing out there that's more valuable than educating yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Exactly.
But what I'll do, I'll keep you all up to date in next week's show as well. But it really is fascinating how we slammed everything they've slammed the brakes on, so to speak. And they don't know what they're doing with it. So, it's a good thing, because what started off, being frightened of the system and having a bit of knowledge and research and putting it into action, your confidence just blows massively. And these people in suits and so forth and that lot, they're nothing. They're just me and you. They're exactly the same people. It's like what it says, no man is better than any other man. Or should I say man and woman is better than any other man and woman. So, yeah, use the system against them. Brilliant. Absolutely love this. So I will keep you updated. And thanks for the valuable information, because this is all taken on board.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
Cheers.
You're most welcome. I'm so happy that we could clarify a few things for you. I really hope it works out. I mean, it's getting to the point where one of two things will happen. Either they'll steamroll right over top of you and just do whatever they bloody well please, at which point you got so much power, which they probably won't do because of the volume of evidence that you now possess. Or they're just going to give up and seek some sort of an equitable settlement elsewhere. And who knows? Who knows where this is going to go? Because these people, half of these people, I think I can honestly say that they are clinically insane.
Yeah.
And you know, anybody who's dealt with someone who's even a little bit insane knows that they are absolutely unpredictable. You don't know what they're going to do 1 minute to the next. So.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I just want to add as a final, and we discussed it previously, Mark, is that if they come at you with some form of settlement, because it depends on how valuable this project is, and
well, you know how valuable it is.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, it depends. You know how far they really want to go to have this project completed. So then put it to them again. Potentially, if you can't stop the process and you're back into a fighting, defending mode, then another conditional acceptance. Yeah, I'll be happy then. If you really, really, really insist on this, then it's going to cost you $5 million, because that's what it's going to be worth to me for the next God knows how many years. Sorry, pounds, not dollars. You know, to stop my project, my life's work. Or make it 10 million pounds. Make it reasonable. I don't know, but
If it's
give them the figures, you know.
Yeah, you have to justify the figure.
You see, that's what we did. We actually justified the figure. Because of the whole project and the damage it caused to the family, the whole stress and slot. We came out with it was a reason. It was something that Lisa plucked out her own backside, to tell you the truth, and just sent it an email, because they asked how much would it cost, you know, to settle all this matter up. So we said £1.85 million. End of story.
Which is nothing compared to the value of the project.
Yeah, which is worth 6.8 billion. So they've had it, but they just don't want it. But the thing is, you talk about what was that? We were going to go and build a judge, weren't we? For what?
He's basically apparently he's liable for his part in it as well.
Yeah, Lisa was saying the judge part in it, so basically we'll bill him.
Liable.
Yeah, but you don't. He's most definitely liable because he's acting within a conflict of interest, knowingly, willingly, and intentionally. But you don't bill. You wouldn't bill Judge Joe Blow. You would bill Joe Blow acting as. Right. Keep it in the private. Keep it in flesh and blood versus flesh and blood. As soon as you invoke an office, you screwed yourself.
Yeah. Right. Thanks ever so much, gentlemen. You know, we'll get anybody else coming into this one, but next week we'll have better, more good news, so to speak.
Yeah,
well, more news for
fingers
sure.
crossed for you. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks, Mark and Lisa, for coming on and telling us your story. And I, you know, like I said before, I really hope this works out. I think it probably will. You may have a little more dancing to do, but it sounds like it's pretty much finished. They've screwed up. Yeah. They've screwed up too many times, and like nobody who looks through this information is going to look at this and go, "This is lawful. This is reasonable. This is according to the rules." And that's a tremendous amount of power when you have all that documentation. Oh, yeah. Wow, that was.
I think one of the points that you were just and Mark was just discussing there was it's the old adage is that knowledge is power. Now, of course, we've had this discussion in the past because I never believed that knowledge with action is power. So yes, we've got that. they now have the knowledge, they're acting in good honor and good faith, and it's become very powerful. But the other side of that too is stuff that I've discussed on the show previously, that you operate from a different mindset, you operate from a different level, and you operate in good faith with honor, with all the positive emotions and words that you can think of and states of being, and you deal with things differently, and the end result is you lose the fear. Because I think of a quote that came from Total Recall, the movie, and the quote was, "Fear is the mind killer," and it is. It's also the heart killer, because fear itself destroys your ability to do anything. So losing the fear is one of the most important things that you can do. And having knowledge and operating from the right mindset, the right heart set feeling, helps that process, helps you do that. So I know there are a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, well, I'm just one man. I'm just one. How do I do this?" Well, you really have to do this yourself. You have to study. You preferably get study buddies, and help each other. But losing the fear is the end goal, because once you do that, then they really can't touch you. It's the fear that kills you. It's the fear that stops you from doing things or makes you do things that you don't want to do.
And for anybody who thinks that one person can't make a difference, it's only one person that ever makes a difference. And it may wind up being a group that takes credit for the difference, but it's always one person, one individual who gets that started.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, listen to what we've said before. Go back over our old shows. Our topics have been kind of varied since the initial stages of the law and the legal, the presumptions of the court. But it all amounts to the same thing. Sentio mentia means meetings of mind. That applies to any subject. So, whatever we're discussing, if you guys are interested in it and it's helpful to you, by all means let us know, because we'll discuss whatever it is that you guys really want to discuss, if we're able to. Some things we don't know about. Jack of all trades, master of none, standing here. But, we know a lot. And we enjoy the challenge too. And being able to chat with, the likes of you guys and Mark coming onto the show there, giving us the feedback of the almost instantaneous results, because Mark had already gotten to a point where he'd established a level of knowledge was way beyond, the learner. He'd studied so much, he and Lisa. My apologies, Lisa. You both have studied really, really well, and you reached a point that you were putting that knowledge into action, and you had been into the court system and realized where you were, who you were, and you lost the fear. And anybody else can do that. They really can. And to be able to hear that in the feedback from Mark and Lisa now is priceless. Because anybody that listens to the show, it really means that we're not just blowing shit out of our ass. We're talking stuff that really can be powerful and can be useful, and we want to get it out to you guys to make sure that you can stand in your own power and you can lose the fear, no matter what the subject is. We concentrated on the legal and law, mainly because that's a big factor of what life is today. But there's money. Debts, it's an understanding of the money system, the debt system. Just a whole bunch of different things that everybody is having to get to grips with every single day in life. Even relationships, that's a whole new level. But yeah, John, have you got anything to add?
Not really. That was pretty much a sufficient summation, I think.
Thank you.
I mean, we can only go over this stuff so many times before we start repeating ourselves. And I know. Don't send me letters. We've repeated ourselves numerous times already. But it's important. It's important stuff. It's important things to get through, and it is very, very vital that people at least embrace the concept of self-education. And because if you listen to a guru, if you get your education from someone else, you're going to learn what they want you to know. If you go and get it yourself, you're going to learn what you want to know. And it's only your intent, your drive that's going to limit what you learn. And I don't know if I brought this up on the show before, but a lot of people have said, well, where can I find this information, or what do I look for? And I won't answer those questions. I will get them started with an idea. I'll ask them, well, where's your passions? What part of this? Is it driving? Is it money? Is it, where is your drive coming from in this? And then I will point them to where they can start looking at that point. But I'm not going to direct their research, because they're going to find stuff that I've missed. They're going to find stuff that's relevant to them. They're going to find stuff that they didn't even realize they're looking for. And if I'm directing their research, then they're going to find what I'm expecting them to see. And that's the big difference there. So anybody who does this research, I did get asked a question, what do I read? Where do I get this information? What do I look for? And I gave them a very, very broad answer. Start here. And at that point, it's gonna be hands off. I'll clarify stuff if they come and go, well, I read this, I don't really understand it. I will help clarify that, but I'm not going to direct what you're looking for or what you're going to find, because that's just simply wrong. It's not my job. I don't want the job, and it's not. It doesn't serve the student. The only way I can serve the students, the people that are learning the best, is to get them to ask questions. And it's, I can't even direct the questions that they ask. If they are completely out of line, or, completely have no idea what even to start with, I will, I'll give them a couple of questions to start asking. And maybe a couple of possibilities to look at, but they're going to be very, very broad strokes. They're going to be, at that level, more or less useless, but it's going to get them moving on how to ask the right questions. Because until you have some database of knowledge in your system, in your filing system, you don't even know the right questions to ask. And I'm sure Mark has been through this.
You don't know what you don't know is the prime phrase for that.
That's right. And and until you get that little bit of knowledge under your belt, then you start, or once you get that little bit of knowledge under your belt, then you start being able to formulate questions which are extremely powerful and extremely beneficial. And another thing, this is not to get away with anything. Okay, we're not doing this so that people can get away with stuff. We're doing this so that people force the system to act appropriately and correctly. And because I don't have anything against the system. I have something against the corruption in the system. And if the corruption in the system, if we can make that go away, the system works fine. We still need admiralty law. We still need commercial law, because there's commercial entities out there. But the problem that we're encountering now is that it's all been wrapped up into one bag of tricks, and they view everyone as a commercial entity, which is actually not technically correct. So this is why we're doing this. It is to help people, bring us back to a community, to a system that actually works properly. Because this system is broken. It doesn't work properly. Mm-hmm. And right now, the only tool we have, we can't just go and shoot these people and start all over again with honest people. We have to expose all of this stuff so that the general masses get to see the difference. Because until they see the difference, they're not going to know there is a difference.
Yeah. If they don't know what's wrong, then they're not going to know what's right either.
That's right. I mean, everybody has a pretty, a gut instinct of, that's just not right. Or this is the way we should be doing things. But they don't know the background. They don't know the fine points of making that happen. And this is the questions that we want people to ask, is to expose those fine points and get them back to a place where we don't have, if you need to go to court for something, you walk in there, it's going to be an honest and it's going to be an honorable, there's going to be no deception. That's where we want to go. If you need an adjudicator or an arbitrator in a dispute, then that arbitrator is going to act in the best interests of all parties involved, which is not what's happening right now. And this is why we have to question this stuff, because that's the only tools we have, unless en masse. I mean, in Canada, what do we got? 40 million people roughly in Canada. There's probably 10, 15,000 lawyers and judges. I mean, the numbers are on our side. If we've got all of those people questioning what these legal system participants are doing, they're not going to be able to play their games anymore. But right now, we've got a very small group questioning this, and that's the point of the show, is to change that, to get everybody questioning it. When somebody makes a claim in an official capacity, okay, awesome. You made a claim, prove it. Show me where you have even authority to make this claim. What contract have I signed? Where's the paperwork? Where's the agreement? Governance. I mean, I hear it all the time. It drives me nuts. Our leaders are doing this and I don't like it. Well, they're not your leaders, dude. If you don't want to be governed, you are not obligated to be governed. I am capable of governing myself quite happily, and I don't cause other people problems, and I don't need their services. So I fired them. I don't have leaders. I don't have MLAs. I don't have a prime minister, because I'm not part of that system. I've divorced myself from that system, and I don't play the game. You are not obligated to be governed.
Many people don't know how to do that as well. That's part of the information that we try and give. Well, because they end up contracting in ways that they don't understand is a contract.
Certainly. But the first thing to get through your head is you are not obligated to be governed. I mean, if you think about it very clearly. What is the system that is generated when someone says, I have authority over you and you have nothing to say about it? Is that not slavery?
In my books, it is.
Yeah. So, if you want to opt out, which you're well within your rights to do, ensure that you are capable of governing yourself. Ensure that you are capable of conducting your affairs honestly, honorably, and without question. And then no one can say, well, you are incapable of doing this, so we are going to set ourselves up as trustee of your affairs, and you are going to deal with it the way we want you to deal with it. And that's, it really comes down to that. If you can conduct your affairs in a manner that can't be questioned, or that if it is questioned, it's easily defended, then there's no need for this system that we're all struggling against. And the more people we have doing that, the easier it's going to be for everybody else. Yes, totally. I see it. I heard it coming through the ethers. There's all kinds of people out there who are incapable of doing this. And at this time, yeah, sure. I totally agree. There's lots of people out there that need to be governed. But is it their fault? Is it inherent in them that they cannot act honorably? Or is it a trained learned response of a system of lack. And in most cases, when I really look at it, I can see it's probably a trained, learned response of a system of lack. If we teach them either to accept the lack and live with it, or get them out of the lack, then a lot of this stuff is just going to go away because you don't need it. I mean, it's come up. It's come up a couple of times. One of the easiest ways to think about this is if every single individual in any area, or even the planet for that matter, had everything they needed, not necessarily wanted, but needed. They had a place to live, a comfortable place to live. They had food to eat. They had transportation at their fingertips. They had a purpose. The stress of I gotta feed my family, I gotta feed my dog, were gone. Would there still be crime? And I think pretty much everybody, if you look at it honestly, I think they can say most crime out there is due to this system of lack. They're lacking something in their lives. They're lacking a place to live. They're lacking food. They're lacking a purpose. They're lacking vision. They're lacking a future. They do it because they don't see any other way to obtain what they need or what they believe they need in their lives. If those needs were met, there would be no point. So it would only be the true psychopaths that are doing criminal acts because they like hurting people. And those people are broken. They need help. They don't need prison. They need counseling. They need rewiring to some degree. I mean, some of them, there may not be a solution for it. But a lot of these people, you take away the stresses, you take away the problems that they're facing, and they no longer have to do what they feel they need to do in order to solve the problems. And I think another
point, just bringing up, sorry, John, I just wanted to bring a point that the psychopaths themselves, if we get into a system of society where we're all changed and we don't, or we're not living under survival mode in a system of lack, and we're not all doing drugs because we want to escape the reality that we live in and just morph into something else. Once we act in the right manner and the right fashion and with honor and so on and with love, all right, positive feelings, emotions and actions, then any of the psychopaths are automatically, they stand out. Because if they don't change, then they are very obviously broken. And you see them for who they are instantaneously. Problem we have nowadays is that because everybody is acting in the psychopathic manner because of the isms of society, the capitalism, communism, and whatever else that you want to suggest, all this stupid training in how societies should function, capitalist actually being the worst, is my opinion. That everybody seems like a psychopath, so you can't really spot the true psychopath. So we have to make that change as a society, as humanity, and then what's left, if they're still acting that way, then they are quite obviously broken, and you can do what you can to either try and fix them, make sure they never get into the positions that psychopaths get into now. So again, that's another factor of making that change in our society.
Yeah, and there's lots of people out there that this isn't going to happen. It's too big. It's too big. It's too much, and it's just a choice. It's a choice to how you respond to your environment. And yes, I live in significant lack. I don't have enough to feed my dog. I don't have enough to pay my bills. But that's okay because it's a choice that I made. And I'm not going to go steal to pay my bills. I'll just live without. And it's getting to the point now where I really do have to accept that I have to live without a few things. And I haven't bought new clothes in like 3 years. because I just can't afford it. I got to put what resources I do get elsewhere, and I'm working on. I've got my fingers in a number of different pies to try to fix that, but they're slow growth, long term projects, and it's not going to happen really fast. But the point here is it's a choice. You either choose to accept the system of lack and do whatever it takes to get through that system, or you choose to accept the system of lack and accept the lack for what it is. And when you recognize that the lack is manufactured, allowing that to exist in your life, just saying, okay, well, I'm not going to get that this month, and being okay with it, rather than saying, I'm not going to get that this month, so I'm going to go and steal it from my neighbor. It's a choice. It's just a choice, and that choice can happen in a millisecond. So for it to take a long, long time, it doesn't have to. It can, certainly. I mean, there can be people out there that are going to hold on and not make this choice for generations. But it can also happen overnight when people realize they have that choice and they make the choice. We can change this so quick. Which is
I'm hoping it's going to be pretty quick too.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things there's a lot of irons in the fire right now, which are really pushing us along that place to be able to make that choice from a position of a full comprehension. And I mean, we've discussed this numerous times. I've discussed this numerous times with numerous different people, and we're pretty much in agreement that yes, it's going to wind up being a process. It's not just going to be we wake up one morning and there's a news flash and everybody changes. It's going to be those who are really paying attention are going to get it first. They're going to start educating others. For myself, it's when I am able to do so in a big way and give them practical examples that they can implement right away without years of research. I'm going to go for the lowest in society, lowest in the community, the people who are struggling the most, and bring this to them and say, hey, you don't have to struggle anymore. Here's some options. And let it trickle from the bottom up. Because as soon as, you walk down the street, pretty much any big city, there's always someone on that street, unless it's, they've taken steps like Vancouver to move them to places where nobody walks. You're going to see disenfranchised people. You're going to see people who are what would be considered insultingly so marginal. And when all of a sudden, within a week or so, all these marginal people are gone, and people are going to start to take notice. Well, where'd they all go? What's going on? What's happening? And then they see a guy who used to sit on the street corner with a big sign saying, I can't feed my family, please help. And he's got a decent car, and he's dressed well, and he's happy, and you recognize him, and, a lot of people are going to go, what happened? Last week you were sitting on the corner. What changed? And he'll say, oh, well, I learned something. This is what I learned. And it will be a process. It'll be a trickle down, but it's going to happen really fast. It doesn't have to take years and years and years. It can happen in a couple of weeks. So keep that in mind. I'm not trying to smoke opium here because I know enough about what's coming to not to say when it's going to happen, but to say that it is going to happen. And when it does, it's going to be amazing. Anybody who's following a lot of the alternative stuff knows what I'm talking about. And there's lots of disinformation out there. There's lots of misinformation out there. People with good intentions who just don't quite have it right. What did Peter put in here? Okay. Yeah, I don't know where I was going to go with that.
No, I think you were pretty much covered. The essence of where society needs to go next. where humanity, I should say, rather than society.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah,
look
the
at
concepts we keep talking about, and I just keep focusing is on a change of how you think, not necessarily what you think. That itself can be the biggest change in the future of your life path. Because you changed how you think, not necessarily what it is that you're thinking.
yeah, I mean, on a practical
Later on,
example,
that'll just happen anyway.
yeah, on a practical note here, anybody's listening to this, simply ask yourself, what choices can I make differently that's going to allow growth? That's going to allow me to see my neighbors in a different light, see them as, broken people just like me. What choices can I make that will, well, not necessarily eliminate, but at least reduce the stress of the system of lack? That could be as simple as planting your own garden, learning how to pound a nail, learning how to change your own oil in your car. I mean, start simple. Start your education process, because this is all part of the education process. Start it simply. And if you need to learn a practical skill, learn a practical skill. There's going to be someone out there who will teach you, who will show you what to do. And if for whatever reason you simply cannot find it, the simple fact that you're listening to these shows tells me that you have sitting on your desk or in your hand, the biggest, most extensive library ever known to mankind in the palm of your hand. All of the information you need is there. All you got to do is go get it. So there's really no excuse for someone not knowing how to clean out the trap under their kitchen sink, or change the oil in their car, or change the spark plugs in their car, or fix their eaves if they're falling off their house. It's all there. Now, yes, certain people have certain talents, and other people, they couldn't pound a nail to save their soul. But if they practiced at it, they would get sufficiently competent at it to be able to actually repair something. They may not build anything beautiful or build a house or anything like that, but the simple stuff they can solve that. I've heard a lot of people, well, I can't do that, I'm a woman. Bullshit. I've seen women do amazing things. I've seen women do stuff that I can't do. Now, granted, I'm also realistic about this, and there are certain tasks that women are not suited for. Packing concrete, bags of concrete all day, heavy lifting, the obvious stuff. But there's no reason why, anyone, doesn't matter what gender they're at, what age they're at, well, to be reasonable, that they can't learn how to do something. They can't learn how to fix their own car. They can't, I've look on the internet. There's women out there that build muscle cars. There's women out there that build drag racers. They're doing everything. We're to the point now where, with the exception of a few minor things, we're all the same. We can all do the same things. So if you start asking yourself these questions and you get the thoughts in your head, well, I can't because, question that. Because chances are it's bullshit. You can learn it. You can do it. Like I said, other than packing concrete all day long, and I'm sure there's some women who can pack concrete all day long. I'm generalizing here. Anybody can do anything they want. You can be a brain surgeon if you put your mind to it and learn it. That's all you got to do is learn it. Have the confidence to realize you can expand your knowledge base. And the law is no different. It's no different fixing your car, fixing your house, teaching your kids, homeschooling. Anybody can do this. So, when the limits jump out at you, question the source of those limits. Where did they come from? Are they imposed? Are they actual real limits? And question it honestly, because most of the time they're imposed. They don't actually exist. They are a belief system. And we're going to get into belief systems here in the next couple of shows, because this is a big, big one, and how belief systems control your world, and whether or not those belief systems are valid. There's two ways to look at valid. Valid is, from one perspective, yeah, from the viewer's perspective, the belief system is valid because it's their belief system. From outside of that perspective, chances are they're not valid at all, because they're just a belief system. And you change your belief system, you change your world. And it's really that easy.
Yeah, totally agree, John. So we've got about 10 minutes on the show. Do you want to bring anybody in on, or
Peter,
did you have something to finish there?
Peter Meteor, it's really funny. Peter Meteor put in the chat here. You've never met a Newfie woman then? Oh, yes, I have. I've lived on the East Coast for about almost 2 years, and I've met lots of those. And that's why I say there are women out there who can do incredible, amazing things, and most men can't keep up with them. So, when I do these little stereotypes like this, it's really, really general, because I recognize that it really doesn't matter. And a lot of those, the stereotypes are, again, belief systems. They're imposed limitations that don't actually exist, but they exist because they have been imposed into the belief system. So, just a disclaimer, don't send me mail, because I know the difference. And I'm not really a chauvinist. I'm not really male-centric. I love women, and I'd love to see them transcend where they're stuck at right now. And not swing the pendulum all the way to the other side, which they did in the 70s with the women's lib movement and all of that, but find the balance. Find the balance where gender, in the most cases, doesn't matter anymore. That's what I'd like to see. And that's how I try to promote everything, and that's how I try to live my life. But I also recognize that certain people simply shouldn't be doing certain things, because they're either not prepared or they're not suited for those tasks. And it doesn't matter who you are. I was having a discussion about vocation and what would you like to do? What would drive your passions? And this one lady says, well, she would really like to run a resort, because she loves problem solving. She's an inherent problem solver, but she also likes that intimate social interaction where she's always talking to people, she's always helping people, and always right in there, and in that context, in the context of what we were speaking of, to do what she wanted to do for myself would drive me nuts, because I'm very hands-on. I'm a problem solver. I like solving problems, but I'm a maker. I like making things. I like, at the end of the day, to have something in my hands that I can look at and go, I built this. Where I don't get the same gratification from looking at the end of the day going, I solved 18 people's problems. It's wonderful. I love doing it, but it's not the same. And so I'm not suited to run a resort. And I recognize that. It's not a big deal. Who cares? I'm not a resort runner. So there are people out there who are. Let's get the people who are good at doing stuff. And the people who aren't good at doing stuff to question what could they be good at, and exploring that and pursuing that, and taking on the role of what can I do that I love to do? What can I do that I thrive at? Rather than what can I do to make a living? We really need to look at this question too, because very, very soon we're going to be facing that exact question, where it's no longer necessary to make a living. Your living is assured. So what do you love to do? What would you pursue if you could do anything you wanted? And it's
I think there's going to be a situation where those like you, John, who are makers and love to do that. There are those, as you mentioned, who are not makers. They're not practical in that way, but they're exceptional, have exceptional imagination. exceptional creativity. So these are the people that are going to have the ideas for the makers to produce.
Yep.
And that's where the society, the humanity, keep changing that. This is where humanity will advance, because the creators will create an idea and the makers will bring it to fruition. And as humanity as a whole, going to benefit from doing that. We can't have a humanity full of makers, because if there's no ideas, what the hell are they going to make? And the same goes the other way. We can't all be creationists, because we might be creative, but we've got nobody to turn that into a reality. So
yep. I mean, we need artists, we need musicians, we need dreamers. We need people that sit there and contemplate their navel for 25 years and then come up with an amazing poetry. We need these people, and they have value. They have a purpose. They have a place in the community. But we don't need lawyers. We don't need politicians, because that's, the lawyers, their entire job is deception. It's not about maintaining law. It's not about making sure the right thing happens. It's all about deception. Politicians is a popularity contest, and the one with the biggest smile that shakes the most hands is the one who gets paid. And it's ridiculous. It's such a stupid way to live. It's not a meritocratic system. It's a system of who can bullshit the best. And I hate it. No, I don't hate it. I don't hate anything. I certainly do not prefer it. And I try to not promote that system as much as I possibly can. So, think about it over the next week. Think about, what would you do if you could do anything? And it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if it's a selfish thing. If it comes up and I would just bugger off and go live in the mountains and have a dog and a cow and commune with the trees. It doesn't matter, because we need people to do that too. We need people to take care of the forests and to manage, not necessarily manage, but be companions to the forest. So if it's something that, like this lady that I was speaking to earlier this week, she had a hard time. She'd never asked herself that question, ever. So she really didn't have an answer. And we spent probably, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours just exploring that. And, asking her questions about, would this fulfill you? What would make you feel fulfilled? What would make you want to wake up every morning and go, I can't wait to get started? And that's so. Start asking yourself those questions. Start asking yourself the questions of, what would I do if there was no lack? If I needed something, I could immediately obtain it, regardless of what it is. And all of my needs were met. What would you do? What would your life look like at that point? And what would be different? So I think, we got 2 minutes left. I haven't had anybody want to come in and talk. I was thinking about that about a half an hour ago. We should actually open it up for questions. But every time we open it up for questions, all we get is crickets.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, if anybody wants to come in, just throw it in the chat. Just say, hey, call me in, and we'll bring you in, because we don't have a way to put your hands up in this venue, so we have to do it a little bit differently. Well, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your stuff for next week. Homework for next week. Think about the questions I asked. Think about what would you do if you could do anything you wanted. And I'm going to devote the last half hour of the show to the audience. I want you guys to come in and explore possibilities. Bring up ideas. Bring up your thinking process, how you came to that conclusion. Or if you even managed to get there. If you can't get there, if you didn't get there, that's fine. Bring that up too and say, I've looked at so many possibilities, I just can't decide. And let's open that discussion up so that the people who are going to be facing this very, very shortly will at least have some kind of a tool to use, a direction that they can go to help clarify their situation and reduce that stress. So on that note, Carl, thank you very much. It's been an awesome show. I know you're out of the house right now, and it was probably a bit of a struggle to get everything working for you. Thanks for persevering and being on.
Oh, you're welcome. I loved it. we tend to come together and just, these days we just have the right content, and we seem to just put it out there so well. So yeah, thank you, John, for being producer and co-host. It's a pleasure every time. And just for future information, I think the next 2 shows may also be on location. So just so you know.
Okay, no problem. If you're not around, I'm sure we can fill the time in. We'll just have to get more audience participation happening. So thanks, everybody.
I should be able to make it, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the audience. Thanks to those listening, and even those listening after the fact. You're valuable too, and we love having you, and we love passing this information on and getting people to ask the questions. So on that note, everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.